The savanna continues its quiet routines without pause, grass bending in the wind, distant antelope shifting their paths, birds lifting and settling as they always do. In the middle of that movement, the lion remains still. His body is stretched on its side, mane dulled by dust, ribs rising only faintly with each breath. One flank is darkened where blood has soaked into the fur and dried unevenly, matting the hair against his skin. Flies hover and land freely now, tracing slow patterns over his shoulder and along the wound unchallenged. What draws attention first is not the sight of injury, but the absence of response. A male of his age and size would normally announce himself long before anything came close. Even wounded, there would be sound, tension, a warning carried low in the chest. Instead, there is nothing. No lifting of the head. No tightening of muscle beneath the skin. When shadows shift nearby, his ears barely move, and only one eye opens briefly before closing again, clouded with exhaustion rather than focus. From a distance, those watching slow their pace instinctively. They do not rush. Years of observation have taught them that sudden movement can cost an animal its remaining strength. The lion's breathing is shallow and uneven, each inhale catching slightly before continuing. His tail lies slack against the grass, the tip no longer flicking at irritation. When a gust of wind passes, it carries the smell of iron and decay, faint but unmistakable, mixing with the dry scent of sun-warmed earth. The wound appears old enough to have drained him, but recent enough to still burn. A torn muscle beneath the skin tightens occasionally, sending a ripple through his flank that ends as quickly as it begins. His paws curl inward, claws half-sheathed, a posture more protective than aggressive. The mane around his neck lifts and falls with effort, no longer framing a posture of dominance, but sheltering a body conserving what little it has left. Nearby animals register him and move away without alarm. Zebra widen their arc, wildebeest lift their heads and continue on. Even scavenger birds circle higher than usual, aware that the moment has not fully arrived. The savanna has learned patience, and so have the people who stand watching. One of them lowers binoculars slowly, eyes remaining on the rise and fall of the lion's chest. A quiet breath leaves his mouth, barely louder than the grass shifting around his boots. "He's still breathing," he says, not to signal hope but to mark time. Another nods, adjusting her stance to keep the wind from carrying their scent too strongly. Their movements are measured, deliberate, designed to take nothing more from the animal than what has already been lost. The lion's head lifts a fraction, no more than the weight of his mane allows. His mouth opens slightly, drawing in air through parted jaws, tongue dry, lips cracked. A low sound escapes him, not a growl, not a roar, but something closer to breath passing over strained muscle. It fades quickly, leaving only the soft buzz of insects and the distant calls of birds. As the sun edges lower, light stretches across the grass, catching on the curve of his shoulder and the scarred map of his body. Shadows lengthen, cooling the ground beneath him. He does not rise, but he does not slip away either. The savanna waits with him, wind moving through the grass, carrying the day toward evening, holding the moment in a fragile stillness. They do not enter the space all at once. The approach is slow and angled, never direct, shaped by years of learning how animals read intention through posture and distance. The lion notices them before they are close enough to define, his remaining eye opening briefly as unfamiliar shapes interrupt the horizon. His head shifts a few centimeters, then settles back into the grass. The effort costs him more than it should, and his breathing stutters before finding a shallow rhythm again. There is no charge, no warning sound, no gathering of strength. That absence confirms what observation already suggested. This is not a lion preparing to defend territory. It is a body holding itself together through habit alone. They stop far enough away to let the air settle. No one speaks at first. The savanna fills the silence with its own steady sounds. Insects ticking, grass whispering, a bird calling from somewhere unseen. The lion's chest rises and falls, uneven but persistent. His ears flick once, weakly, then remain still. Only as they circle wider does the injury reveal itself fully. What looked at a distance like a single dark stain resolves into torn flesh beneath the mane, the edges swollen and misshapen. The wound is not fresh. The tissue around it is inflamed, discolored, carrying the unmistakable signs of infection. The smell reaches them even before they are close, thick and sour beneath the dry heat. This is the aftermath of a fight survived, not won. A clash for territory or dominance that ended without immediate death, but without healing either. A lion can endure much alone. Pain, hunger, exhaustion are woven into survival. But infection is patient. It does not chase or strike. It waits. And over days, perhaps weeks, it has taken more from him than his body could replace. The weight loss is visible now in the hollowing of his hips, the way skin hangs looser along his ribs. His strength has been spent not on hunting or movement, but on simply remaining alive. When they move again, it is deliberate and slow. Every step is placed with care, boots brushing grass rather than snapping it. One person kneels, lowering their profile, letting the lion see the shape of a human body without looming over him. His eye opens again, wider this time, the white showing briefly. His breathing quickens, chest fluttering with a thin tremor of fear. "It's okay," someone says softly, the words barely louder than the wind. The lion does not understand the sound, but he understands tone. The voice does not advance. It does not demand. He releases a weak huff of air through his nose, jaws parting slightly as if deciding whether resistance is still possible. His foreleg twitches, claws flexing once against the earth, then relaxing. Intervention does not begin with touch. It begins with space. They allow him room to register their presence without being forced to respond. Equipment is prepared quietly, movements rehearsed and minimal. The goal is not control but relief, to stop the body from fighting both pain and fear at the same time. When the sedative is finally administered, it is done with precision, timed between breaths. The lion startles at the sensation, head lifting sharply before dropping back with a dull thud against the grass. His breathing spikes, then gradually slows as the tension drains from his muscles. The fight leaves him not with collapse, but with a kind of heavy surrender, limbs loosening, jaw slackening slightly. For the first time in days, perhaps longer, the pain recedes. Not gone but softened. His chest rises more evenly now, the frantic edge dulled. Flies scatter as hands move closer, examining the wound carefully, cleaning away what has festered unseen. No one rushes. Every action is measured against what his body can tolerate. As the sun continues its descent, the light shifts from harsh to warm, brushing the grass with gold. The lion lies still, no longer struggling against his own body, held in a fragile pause between what he was and what might still be possible. The wind moves through the savanna, carrying the scent of evening, and for the first time in many days, the lion's breathing does not fight it. Time slows around the work. The heat of the day begins to ease, and with it the sharp edge of urgency that had hovered just beneath every movement. The lion remains on his side, heavy against the ground, but his body is no longer locked in tension. His breathing deepens gradually, each inhale drawing farther into his chest than before, each exhale leaving with less effort. The rise and fall become more regular, less guarded, as though his body is relearning a rhythm it had nearly forgotten. Hands move carefully along his flank, cleaning and treating tissue that has been inflamed for too long. The wound reacts in small ways, a tightening of muscle, a brief tremor beneath the skin, but there is no attempt to pull away. The lion's head shifts once, mane brushing the grass, then settles again. His jaw opens slightly, releasing a low sound that barely carries, not a warning, not a call, but something uncertain, shaped more by sensation than intention. It is answered only by stillness. No one speaks. No one rushes to soothe or restrain. They have learned that too much reassurance can be as disruptive as fear. Instead, they allow the moment to pass, watching as the sound fades and the lion's chest steadies again. Small signs begin to appear, easy to miss if not watched for closely. A slow twitch at the end of his tail, not sharp or agitated, but reflexive, as if a signal is traveling once more through pathways dulled by exhaustion. His ears move faintly, responding to a distant call carried on the wind. When a fly lands near his eye, the lid closes more firmly than before, holding shut for a few seconds before opening again. These are not gestures of strength. They are signs of presence. The lion does not rise. His legs remain folded awkwardly, weight settled deep into the earth. But the stillness of his body has changed. Earlier, it had been the stillness of depletion, of something nearing its end. Now it is quieter, heavier, anchored. He is no longer drifting. He is here. The humans working around him are aware of how fragile that distinction is. Infection does not retreat easily. Damage done over days cannot be undone in hours. They know that recovery, if it comes at all, will not announce itself dramatically. It will arrive, if it arrives, in increments so small they can only be noticed by those willing to wait. One of them adjusts position, careful not to block the breeze that moves across the lion's body. Another pauses, watching the pattern of breath for longer than necessary, counting without numbers, reading what cannot be measured. He's holding, someone murmurs, the words meant less as reassurance and more as acknowledgement. The lion's chest expands again, deeper than before. Air moves through him without the earlier hitch. A faint vibration passes through his throat, barely audible, then disappears. His paw shifts slightly, claws brushing the dirt, leaving shallow marks where earlier there had been no movement at all. Around them, the savanna continues. Light softens. Shadows stretch. Somewhere far off, a herd begins to move, their shapes dark against the warming sky. The world does not pause for one lion, but it does not push him forward either. The humans remain where they are, quiet and attentive, understanding that survival is not a promise they can make. They can only offer the conditions under which it might happen. Relief instead of pain. Calm instead of fear. Time instead of urgency. The lion lies still, breathing steadily now, held between effort and rest. The wind moves through the grass, carrying evening with it, and in that movement there is no certainty, only the quiet permission to continue, one breath at a time. Days pass without ceremony. Treatment becomes routine, then careful waiting. The lion remains mostly out of sight, resting where shade holds longest and the ground stays cool. His movements are slow and limited, but each day brings small confirmations that the body is no longer losing ground. The wound closes gradually, edges tightening, the smell of infection fading into the background of earth and grass. His breathing settles into a steady pattern, deeper at night, calmer in the mornings. When he shifts, it is with intention rather than collapse. On the fourth morning, the air is clear and still. Light spreads evenly across the savanna, soft enough to hold detail without glare. The lion is seen standing for the first time, legs stiff but aligned, weight distributed carefully as though every muscle has been consulted before being used. He remains upright only briefly, adjusting his stance, then lowers himself again. No one approaches. No one speaks. The moment is allowed to belong entirely to him. Later that day, when the heat begins to rise and shadows pull in close to the ground, he stands again. This time he does not immediately lie back down. His head lifts, mane shifting in the breeze, and he takes a step forward. Then another. The movement is not strong, but it is steady. His tail hangs low, tip barely moving. There is no urgency in him now, no sign of alarm. What surprises everyone is not that he walks, but where he turns. Instead of moving deeper into cover, he angles back toward the open space where the humans have remained, distant and unobtrusive. He stops several meters away, far enough to maintain his own safety, close enough that his posture can be read clearly. His head is high at first, eyes fixed, body aligned but not braced. There is no stiffness in his shoulders, no preparation for defense. He pauses there, still and balanced. Then, slowly, his head lowers. Not in weakness, not in submission, but in something quieter. His neck relaxes, mane settling against his chest. A soft sound leaves him, barely audible, carried only a short distance before dissolving into the air. It is not a call. It is not a warning. It is simply sound shaped by breath. No one moves. The lion remains where he is for only a few seconds. His gaze lingers, steady and unclouded, meeting the shapes in front of him without the distance of fear. This is not recognition in any human sense. It is not gratitude, not understanding. It is something more elemental, an absence of threat where threat once lived. A decision not to leave immediately. A brief allowance. It's all right, someone says quietly, not stepping forward, not changing position. The lion lifts his head again. His ears flick once, catching the tone, then settle. He turns away without haste, walking back toward the grass with the same measured steps. There is no backward glance. The moment does not ask to be held longer than it is. Later, as evening approaches, he is seen again resting beneath a low acacia. His body is angled toward the wind, wound protected, eyes half closed. When flies gather, his tail moves with enough strength to scatter them. His chest rises fully now, each breath filling space without strain. The humans keep their distance. They understand that whatever passed between them was not an exchange to be repeated or deepened. It was a crossing, brief and narrow, and it has already closed behind him. As the sun lowers, the savanna shifts color, grass darkening, sky thinning to pale gold. Somewhere beyond sight, a herd moves, hooves dull against the earth. The lion remains still beneath the tree, breath steady, body grounded. The wind passes through his mane and carries on, leaving nothing behind but the quiet knowledge that trust, when it appears at all, does so softly, and never stays long. Strength does not return in a straight line. Some mornings the lion rises with less effort, weight shifting more confidently through his legs. On others he remains longer in place, conserving energy, listening to his body before deciding whether to move. His appetite improves in small increments, his attention widening beyond the narrow focus of pain. Muscles begin to fill again, not evenly, but enough to change the way he carries himself. The sharp edges of exhaustion soften, replaced by a guarded steadiness. He starts to travel farther from where he has rested. At first, only a few steps, then longer distances traced slowly across familiar ground. Each movement is deliberate, measured against memory and instinct. He pauses often, not from weakness alone, but from caution, testing balance, listening to the signals that once failed him. The wound tightens further, pulling slightly when he turns, a reminder of what remains vulnerable. He adjusts without hesitation, angling his body to protect it, learning again how to move with care. The humans notice these changes without drawing attention to them. They do not mark progress aloud. They have learned that recovery unfolds best when unobserved. Their presence stays distant, consistent, never pursuing, never signaling expectation. When the lion rests farther away, they allow the space to widen. When he disappears briefly into cover, they do not search for him. One morning, the light arrives differently. The air is cool and clear, carrying the scent of dew and crushed grass. The sun lifts slowly over the horizon, touching the savanna in pale gold. The lion stands alone at the edge of tall grass, his body outlined briefly against the brightness. He holds still for a moment, head raised, mane catching the light. There is no urgency in him, no sign of distress. His breathing is calm even. He takes a step forward. Then another. The grass parts around his legs, brushing against his sides, hiding his movement almost immediately. His tail moves once, steady and controlled. He does not look back. There is no hesitation in the direction he chooses, only the careful continuation of motion. Each step carries him farther from view, his shape dissolving into color and texture until there is nothing distinct left to follow. No one moves to stop him. The humans remain where they are, watching the grass settle behind him, listening to the quiet return. There is no signal to mark the moment as complete. No sound, no final gesture. Just absence where presence had been. "He's gone," someone says softly, not as an announcement but as acknowledgement. They wait longer than necessary, eyes scanning the grass without expectation. The savanna resumes its subtle rhythms. Birds shift in low branches. Insects hum. A breeze moves through the tall stems, catching light and shadow, erasing any trace of his passing. They know better than to follow. To do so would be to turn survival into spectacle, to ask something more of a life that has already given enough. The lion has chosen movement over rest, distance over familiarity. That choice belongs entirely to him. As the sun climbs higher, the light strengthens, flattening shadows, warming the earth. The place where the lion once lay is indistinguishable now from any other patch of ground. There is no sign left behind that could be called proof. Only memory remains, of a body that endured, of stillness that shifted meaning, of trust that appeared briefly and vanished without demand. The knowledge settles quietly among those who witnessed it, that survival does not always announce itself, and sometimes the only thing it leaves behind is the certainty that a life continued unseen into the day.